That all you on November 7th. The guy at the U.S. Congress that wears hoodies and basketball shorts. I'd like to welcome everybody out this evening. Appreciate you being here. So we are at 5 o'clock. We do have a scheduled workshop presenting information regarding the downtown management proposal and an update report from the community open house that we conducted on September 28th here in this room. So we do have Mr. Jenkins here to talk on that, kind of show where we've been and where we're at and where we had maybe had some being here. We actually had a great turnout. Council members be there for that. We received over 40 responses that evening, which actually is really good for an open house to have that many people come out. So we did appreciate the feedback that was received. And Steve and I looked at that and are proposing some implementing changes on that according to the feedback that was received. So we'll kind of go through that. Any questions, council members, and looking for direction if you agree, disagree, timing, things like that you'd like to see. So with that, Mr. Jenkins, time is yours.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. See you all this evening. Late afternoon, evening, where we're at. Happy to share some updates on parking, and of course the open house that we had recently. It was, as the mayor mentioned, it was well attended. Very glad to hear the feedback from the folks that were in attendance, and even the subsequent feedback that we received after the meeting that was held. So all those things are very helpful as we work toward the goal of mitigating some of our parking downtown. And I just want to mention before we get started, it's important to note that our parking ordinance that we're looking to implement are really to create and to encourage turnover of parking stalls downtown, so that we can allow the businesses that are operating in our downtown core the opportunity to do so, and also for visitors coming into the community an opportunity to have available parking. So I think obviously having that goal as our backdrop as we talk about this a little more extensively is always good to note. With that, let's get started here. And all right, so a little bit on the historical background, and I actually have a document to provide to you as well before I get too deep into this. Mayor, if you mind if I pass this?
Right ahead.
Perfect. All right, thank you for letting me interrupt there and hand that document out. So really this refers to some historical information relative to parking in downtown Caldwell, and the Kimball Albany parking lot is first on the list, and this pertains to that lot that was built just north of the tracks on Kimball and Albany, of course, and it's 85 stalls, and that was awarded back in 2021, and you can see that the landscaping was there back in May of 2021, so that was all finalized and ready to go to provide more parking downtown. And then the parking lot at 510 Arthur, which we put that signage up that conveys that it's free parking to the public just across from City Hall there. That was done back in 2022. And of course, we had some workshops that pertain to parking here in this room relative to parking. September 15th was the first one that we had, 2022. March 7th, 2023, March 21st, 2023, and then August 21st, 2023. So we've had some great discussions here, and just want to reiterate that, of course, we were working through this as diligently as we can, and those things are so helpful just to have open workshops and open feedback and open lines of communication, quite frankly, as we work through these details. All right, so this slide is one of a few that we had shared during our open house here in this room last Thursday. And this pertains to our downtown parking study, which was provided on July 19th of this year. That was finalized for us by Kimley Horn. And it shows that during the peak hours, and if you all pay attention to that blue dotted line on the first part of this slide, it shows on May 13, 2023, which is Mother's Day market. It shows that there was 70% utilization, 77% utilization, which is very, very high. And that peak time is at noon. So that's for all public parking downtown, that blue dashed line. That that dashed green line is for the private parking stalls. So that is a little lower at right around 60% on that Mother's Day market day. And then the next day was the first day of the farmers market, and that was captured on May 16th. And you can see that the peak hours in terms of the drone footage that was collected during that day was at 6 p.m. that day. So you can see that the public parking stalls were utilized at a rate of about 60%, in the mid 60s, almost 70% there. So pretty high utilization for downtown. Then we showed another one to correspond with that sheet, essentially showing us as staff where the parking was most utilized. The first slide on the top shows the public parking, both on-site and off-site, on-street and off-street, that was utilized during that day. And you can see where the red is notated on that map, the heavy usage that is identified during that parking study. And then the one below is the private parking. And you can see a lot of green there. Of course, private parking wasn't utilized as heavily during that peak time on Mother's Day, the Mother's Day market day, that one of our signature events through Destination Caldwell. But there's still certainly a lot of red on the top slide there, which shows where most folks that are visiting and partaking in the event are parking. And here's another slide that was shown during the open house, basically showing that there's new development that's planned for that dirt lot that's utilized as a parking lot for now at 510 Arthur Street. This building is roughly 23,000 square feet. It's 3 stories, and it includes some residential, about 7 or so condominiums that are proposed for the upper level of this project. And then this is the new Amano restaurant. Again, another project that was approved. And when I say approved, these 2 projects were exclusive to urban renewal. So they're approved through urban renewal, and these are 2 projects that were slated for redevelopment in downtown. This is at 516 Main Street. And then here are the 2 zones that were originally proposed. Of course, staff has been working with the car park to identify and really iron out the final details that pertain to these zones and costs and times of metering for downtown and those things. But this is our first shot at it. Essentially, the red zone would be prioritized a little higher than the blue zone would. And then, of course, the rates would be different in terms of how much we would charge. So the red zone would be more of the premium spaces, and the blue zone would be identified as the periphery, but still within the metered parking, so charged parking that was proposed. And then we had some survey results here. So the next 2 slides, we'll talk a little more about the survey results. So do you think there's a parking problem in downtown Caldwell? The respondents that we received that night, 85% said yes, and 14.63% said no. So overwhelmingly yes in terms of a perceived parking problem downtown. And then the next slide here showcases what would alleviate the parking problem downtown. 74.36% thought that a parking garage would help solve many of our problems downtown. And then we had 43.59% thought that parking meters would be helpful. Another 43.59% thought that parking enforcement would be required to mitigate some of our issues. And of course, parking enforcement and the parking meters kind of are one and the same, so to speak. So you have that enforcement that comes along with that. And then 7.69 thought that parking restrictions would be appropriate. And individual feedback, we also had some feedback cards that were provided that evening. And one recommendation was to provide more free parking spaces for downtown employees along the railroad tracks. Another one was to enforce current parking requirements or restrictions downtown. Another one, additional handicap parking stalls. Another one, provide motorcycle parking. And then free Sunday and Monday parking. And more pedestrian-friendly bulb out, so essentially creating a more walkable downtown. And then lastly, converting angled parking to parallel parking. These were specific to areas like Main Street in our downtown core. And here's, upon review of all the feedback we received, and of course working with our partners at the car park and looking at it as staff, one of the things that we came up with were a couple of designs. So I had shown you previously an image of what was proposed for the red zone and the blue zone, and those are somewhat faded in the background. And the new zone that we would like to propose would be the yellow zone. So that would encompass basically incorporate just one zone downtown, not the 2 that we had previously were looking at, and we would have a little more free parking available for folks that were desirous of that option. And you can see where the yellow zone is here. So that's one recommendation. And then the second recommendation is the green. So again, the original plan is just faded in the background as the red and the blue, and the green would be another one that would be proposed. So this one actually gives the city a little more free parking included, and just focuses primarily on the core, which is in and around Indian Creek Plaza. And so again, the green, the previous slide, I'll go back really quickly. The yellow would be the only one zone that would be metered or paid parking, a variety of meters and kiosks in that zone. And then the second one is the green, which would be a little smaller and a little more centralized. And in the green only, it would be paid parking. So with that, I believe that's all I have to share. On that note, I wanted to give us ample time to discuss these thoughts and ideas as much as we could. So
Perfect.
happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do you mind going back one more, Steve, to kind of show that first alternative on that? Okay, perfect, excellent. Okay, yes, Councilor McGee.
Well, Mayor, you were kind of getting the direction that I wanted to go. There's probably this PowerPoints. You probably can't put those side by side, can you? Without. Okay. I'm trying to compare them a little bit.
I think the only difference is, Steve, maybe is the lot directly north of Main Street, that yellow area. Can you highlight that? Do you have or you maybe don't have a?
Yeah, I see it. I think I see what you're talking about, Mayor. Is that, so that's literally the only difference between the two proposals? I think it's pretty close.
Yeah, pretty close.
Okay, that's very helpful. I just want to point out from my perspective and anecdotally, and I think my anecdotal experience kind of lines up with the statistics that you're providing, Steve, is the way I see this is the parking in the downtown, roughly the downtown core, the area outlined in yellow. That parking is it can be premium at times, as you pointed out on the on the timeline. To me, having metered parking, part of the goal there, not only to raise revenue for future parking garage or some other project, but really to help teach us to park in a little bit further away. And I think under this alternative, you are getting a lot closer to doing that, because there are still free places to park literally within 2 blocks, maybe 3, within 2 blocks everywhere around there. There's free places to park. And folks might have to walk a block, maybe 2, but I don't even see an area where you'd have to walk 3 unless you park clear on the other side. And my experience tells me when my family's come to events that railroad parking is underutilized, right? I think the movie theater's done a good job of trying to get people to park over there, and perhaps downtown businesses have done the same. But I think it's a great solution, because people who don't want to pay don't have to pay, right? They can park, they can walk a block and a half, and they're to their business. And so I commend you for taking that public input and putting that back in this proposal. I think you've done it in a smart way.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman McGee. We appreciate that, and really it was looking at the feedback we received of some of the comments that were provided during that evening. It was mentioned that, hey, we're trying to encourage folks to park near the tracks and walk into the interior of downtown. So we wanted to incorporate a plan that would allow for that to take place. And I think one of the main differences in the 2 outlines that were provided, the yellow and the green boundaries that are shown, is we were looking at improved parking lots downtown as well. So that Indian Creek Steakhouse lot is improved, and we figured, hey, we might include that because it is an improvement. Those other lots that are nearby are not as improved, especially going east towards 12th. So that was the logic behind that bulb out there that cut out. But thank you so much for those comments.
Any other questions, Councilor Register?
Could I see the other slide again with the green?
Absolutely.
I think, so I completely agree with everything that Councilor McGee said. I do kind of feel like maybe this is a really good starting point. It seems to be sort of the least invasive, and kind of getting people used to maybe utilizing those meters or not. I had some questions, and I also appreciate you taking the feedback and doing what we've done here. Was there going to be a time where even at the meters where the parking was free? What was the suggestion on that for, like, Sundays or after a certain hour?
Absolutely. And those were questions that came up during the meeting as well. And one thing that we did as staff is we went and looked at other cities. And of course, we go back to Rapid City, South Dakota quite a bit because we lean on them for different things. We just have a good relationship with their staff there. And they have paid parking in their community. And they're comparable in size to Caldwell. At 79,000 people, we're roughly 70,000. So we felt that it was a decent alignment there. They do have free parking. So on the meters, there's this option where you can press, there's a green button, and essentially gives you the first 15 minutes free within Rapid City, at least. And we were tossing around the idea, well, is it 15 minutes or is it 20 minutes? Is it 25 minutes? So those are things that I think we'll iron out with our parking management partner. But I think having the ability to incorporate that within the meters is probably going to be important, particularly those that utilize downtown for quick drop-offs and pickups and things of that nature. We don't want to eliminate the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. I feel like Boise is probably like 20 minutes. And even though I feel like it's good to look at those comparable cities, I would like to locally kind of match up too. So if it's 20 minutes, I prefer to go 20 minutes, just for that kind of thing. And then was there days that were going to be free, and then after what hour were the meters going to be not, or they were going to be free?
Yes, we've tossed around a few ideas, and one of the recommendations that came in, just real quickly, was free Sunday and Monday parking. Of course, Mondays are a little more quiet downtown, so that was a recommendation perhaps to encourage folks to patronize on that day as opposed to other days when they may be charged for parking. So those are options to consider. Really, we're leaning on the recommendations that you all might provide moving forward so we can then go back to our partners at the car park and establish some of these guidelines. In terms of the hours, we looked at, of course, we're just looking at cities outside of Caldwell and then trying to figure out what's best for us. But in Rapid City, they are 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. And then they have Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And all day on Sunday and holidays is free parking in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Okay.
So we're looking at using those cities to just give us at least the baseline, and of course coming back and saying, okay, what's best for Caldwell at the end of the day. So we'd be leaning on your recommendations.
Okay. And then, so I guess the disability parking, motorcycle parking, that kind of stuff would come up in those discussions as well. And then, was there any thought given to the parallel parking, or was that going to be?
So that's a great question. I know that discussion has come up with the fire department as well, especially on Main Street. Especially if you have two trucks that are just happen to be right in the same kind of lane or whatever, it gets very tight, especially for if a fire truck has to get through there. The concern right now is if we I think we need to go to parallel at some point, and so it's the timing. Do you do it now? Obviously, if you do it now, you're going to lose spots when we're trying to gain spots. So is it more as we move towards a parking garage at that time when we have those additional spaces being created in downtown? Now we can go to parallel parking throughout, Main Street, Kimball, all of those areas could be a potential for that. So that was a concern. I think we need to go there, especially on Main Street. I know the fire department's expressed to me that concern already. It's just the timing. Do we do it now, knowing we'd lose, obviously, approximately probably half the spots that are there when we're trying to gain? So that's the question, is the timing of it.
I guess that was my next question, is how many spots would we be losing? And is it better to just do it now while we're implementing the meters and kind of all at once, so we're not having to move meters around later, all that, I don't know. And then I guess my other question for you was, as far as enforcement for this, we are hiring somebody to do that, and have we already budgeted on that?
So, and that's one thing, and I know I've talked to a few people on it, and the goal for this is obviously turnover, get more cars coming to downtown, increase the business activity happening in the downtown. And then also the goal is, many of the people that come into downtown are visitors to Caldwell. And so the money that's utilized, the goal isn't to line the city's pockets on that, but all the money that is gained from this would be used for parking improvements in the downtown. So, for example, Stephen mentioned about, the lot that's not, like right next to the one that's highlighted, that little bubble out on the yellow Steve,
Mm-hmm.
to the east of there, it's not improved. So rather than having to use taxpayer dollars to go in and improve that lot, we could utilize the money that's gained from the parking meters to improve that parking lot and then other parking areas in the downtown, possibly help with the parking garage, as Councilman McGee mentioned. But, you know, immediate need, I think, would be to improve some of those parking areas with the money generated rather than having to use taxpayer dollars in that regard. You know, it's more of a user-based fee because people that are using the meters, obviously, that helps to pay for the improvements downtown rather than just the city in general. In regards to the positions, with working with the car park, so they would be the ones hiring and staffing, not the city. So that's nice too. So the money generated would not incur additional expense on the city's behalf. The city council did approve a new parking
Enforcement.
There's a different word other. I'm trying to remember what it is. Parking compliance official. So, so that individual though is more focused on outside of the downtown. You know, handicap parking that's being utilized by people that don't have their proper placards. Illegal parking. We've been noticing a lot of that in like the new parking lot at Sisters Field. There was some pretty big issues at the county fair this year. People parking, you know, in those. So you have the parking stalls, but people really like to park in between where you have those rows, even though there's red paint there that says, you know, basically no parking for fire lane. People love to park there. And so that parking enforcement or parking compliance person would be more focused on the outside. Most of the interior here would be actually the car park individuals, their employees that would be focusing on that and coming out of the money that's earned from the meters would be paying for those people to monitor that downtown.
Okay, so they would, so they monitor the meters and make sure that they're honoring whatever their time is, and then they issue a ticket or whatever it is?
That is correct. So all of that, and that's, you know, still to be determined with the contract we're working out, and that'd have to be approved by council, but the proposal is, yes, they would be the ones monitoring it, they'd be the ones enforcing it, and collecting the revenues, the money for it. And then obviously we would pay a fee for that, and then the additional revenue on top of that, they would pay to the city that we would then use to improve the parking downtown. But any ticketing, anything like that would be done through that third party and not having to have a city hiring a position to do that by the city.
But the idea is that to pay for that fee, we would be getting that in the parking fee. So we wouldn't be implementing more cost to the taxpayer to put these in.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other, Councilor?
This one is a lot more accurate than the drone people, isn't it? Who said we don't have a parking problem. Anyway, just a little dig there, Steve. But just a question: when we had the open house the other day, the folks that own the beauty salon say they're paying to park on that Arthur Street lot.
Oh.
Well, how's that going to fit in with what they're? I don't know if it's an annual fee or monthly or what.
Yeah, Councilor Stoddard, I believe that there's, on Arthur Street, there's a private lot that's managed by an outside entity, Diamond Parking out of Boise.
Okay, so that's not included in this?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be separate from everything we're doing within the city.
Okay. The other question I had is, when you talk to the Rapid City folks, or maybe just between yourselves, was there any thought about making Main Street from 10th to 5th pedestrian friendly and not have parking there at all? Is there any discussion on that?
Not necessarily. In speaking with staff, you know, we're looking at ways, of course, I think that would be the eventual plan, is to make sure to correct some of those issues on Main Street. But as of now, it would be tough to reduce parking in any way. So
without the parking garage.
Without the parking garage or some substitute elsewhere that we could justify it, right? So those are the things that we're balancing. I fully agree. I think that there's some work that needs to be done on Main Street in terms of the angled parking that's currently there.
I just think it'd be much better if we could get there, that you have it pedestrian friendly. So what would be the timetable relative to the parking garage? Do we have any estimate on that after this is implemented, or?
I think this is, in my mind, really, we continue to work on the garage almost simultaneously as we implement the meters and just continue to keep going, keep taking steps in that direction. I would agree that discussions need to keep moving forward, and those are things that, of course, as we look to do different things downtown with urban renewal and all those matters, I feel like those discussions need to stay alive. As a result of looking at the survey results and things like that, it definitely became apparent to us that the public is very, very hungry for a parking garage or a parking structure in the future.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Great report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you go back to the slide, please, Steve, that shows the recommendations? I just want you to clarify something for me here. What is the rationale between, or what is the rationale for free Sundays and Mondays again?
So the Sunday parking is, and Sunday is kind of the uniform, practice across the country as we looked at different models. It was even recommended to us by the car park to have just a free day on Sunday. Monday is because we have a lot of businesses that are open more loosely than other days, or not open at all. And sometimes for us, the thinking, the mentality behind it was, if we had it free on Monday, perhaps it would encourage the public to come out on Monday and to partake in downtown business activities and things like that more frequently than they are currently today. There are some operators that are open 7 days a week downtown, so of course those businesses would benefit as well. It's just a lot more quiet on Mondays, so this would be a mechanism to pull people in as opposed to keep them on the outside.
So you're suggesting that maybe having free Mondays would attract more businesses or more people to come to our businesses. Is that to suggest that having the parking meters the rest of the days might detract people from coming?
No, really, in our minds, the folks that are coming downtown are going to continue coming downtown. This would just be another opportunity for more people to come downtown, perhaps when they wouldn't usually come downtown. So it just provides another option for them that way, to say, hey, there's a free day, let's go ahead and check out downtown, those things. So it's just more of a marketing effort, if you will, just to say, hey, come downtown on a Monday when you usually wouldn't. It's more quiet on Monday, so come participate and help support those businesses.
Councilor Argo,
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Stephen. So we've had a lot of input on the different parking plans, and I think it's been really good. It makes me very optimistic. Has there been a complete resistance to the plan at all? Have we had some people that, what does that resistance look like? I mean, how are people feeling about the whole plan overall?
Yeah, Councilor Argo, it really is a mixed bag, quite frankly, and we've taken in a lot of feedback. As I mentioned, we had, of course, the open house, but even after the fact, I've received a few phone calls since then, and I'm grateful for those phone calls because it gives me the opportunity to really feel through all the opinions and the perspectives, and that's quite frankly how we've kind of nailed this down and tried to understand what would help. I think, and if we could strike some kind of compromise, because you do have businesses that feel like there isn't premium parking available for guests that come downtown. What we had in our previous plan without paid parking was you had way too many folks that were parking in stalls in this core for way too long. I mean, that was a factor that we were certainly dealing with. So it would just open things up, but yet you still have free parking that's readily available and just right near the tracks, but still very close to the interior. So it gives, I think, adding more free parking was something that I heard time and time again after the meeting, and even during the meeting. So we wanted to make sure that was available. Ultimately, I think paid parking is tough to implement. And I think having a good website through the city is going to be helpful in the end, just to make sure people know how to utilize the meters, and also having an FAQ of some kind and things like that. But these are things that we feel are necessary moving forward to help support businesses, not detract from them.
As Councilor McGee said, I think this plan that you're outlining here is a very good mix between metered and free. I mean, I believe everybody would have the opportunity to use either one, whichever most suited them. I like this new plan. Like I said, I believe it encompasses everything that we would need.
Councilor McGee, did you have another?
Yeah, just another point. Thank you, Mayor. If we could go to the last slide on the on the feedback, Steve. And I think this goes without saying, because I know this is what you and the mayor do anyway, but that first bullet about providing free parking spaces for downtown employees. The reason that we're having this discussion here today is because this community has decided, the business community has teamed up with the government, and we have formed what has taken place over the last 5 years, which is the Indian Creek Plaza. I mean, 5 years ago, we would never be having this discussion, I can assure you, right? There was not a parking problem. And so what I would just encourage as we proceed, that we do continue to include the business community. I see Destination Caldwell here, and maybe perhaps a couple of businesses that I patronize sometimes. But I just think it's important to work with them. I think this is one of these things where, and you've already done it, I think, by taking another look at what the outline is. But I think this is one of these prime examples of somewhere where we can work together, we can have discussions, we can come to compromise, right? And what we can do is come up with a better parking solution to our downtown. And so as we progress, and I know you guys will do this, and I just want to encourage you, because I saw that bullet, was just continue to work with Destination Caldwell and local businesses, because I do think that they're solution oriented. We got there by working hand in hand and in cooperation and collaboration. I think we can continue to do that. Good point.
Yeah, I just had a couple more questions. The fee. So the fee proposed was $1.50 inside and $3 on the outside. Is that, or how would the fees work now with either one of those changes?
Yeah, we would just have a flat fee just for the one zone. Before there was a $1.50 proposed fee on the interior where that red outline is, the red boundary, and then the blue boundary would be $1. But now it just would change to one flat fee.
Do you know what that fee would be?
I don't for certain. I know maybe $1.50 where we originally started, somewhere in that ballpark. But I know that some of the feedback that we had was that they were comfortable with the fees, and others felt like it could be adjusted. So I think, perhaps we'll look at that and take the recommendation that the car park and perhaps council will provide on that.
So whatever that fee is, who decides on that, and how long does it last? Like, does council decide on that fee, and then once that's it, then if it's changed, it has to go through council again, or can the car park change it themselves?
So the car park really is just taking our recommendations. So I think what would happen was we would establish that management agreement, and all that information would come to council for your review and further approval.
But they can't increase the fee just arbitrarily on their own. It would have to come back to us.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then I don't know if this is the appropriate time for this, and you can stop me if it's not. But some of the other concerns that I've heard or that I see online, and I don't know if maybe you can address it just to kind of put the facts out there, because there's a lot of theories that are out there. One of them was the apartment parking. So they have apartment parking inside their apartment, and then they have so many passes, I guess, to park on the outside, right? So the question is how many passes do they have, and where are they going to park? Are they going to take up parking spots? Are they going to a different lot? How's that going to work? Mm-hmm. And then with the hotel parking, same concern that they're going to take up parking spots, but it was my understanding that they were going to, or that some of the things that they were talking about was valet and renting their own private lots, so it wouldn't affect parking. So just once and for all, how the hotel and the apartment is going to affect parking or not.
Sure. And perhaps I can address the hotel, and maybe I can defer to Mark on the Tillian project, because I know we're still working through the parking agreement. So the hotel, what they have decided to do is really work with staff to identify parking that would be off-site from the hotel. Of course, they are looking to implement valet, but beyond that, we're looking at the private parking that was displayed on some of the images provided in this slide and others through the parking study that we could further utilize to support their needs on site. So we were looking at maybe a shared parking model of some kind, and we've already had some very productive discussions with private property owners in and around that area.
So we're not looking at the hotel taking up spots on the street at all at this point?
No, not at this point. So really what we're going to do is exhaust all our options and work through that. And of course, on top of that, and Councilor Spadek, I mentioned this earlier, but we're going to continue to work on that parking structure in the future and keep that going. So that, in my mind, that's how things will unfold, is we'll have that hotel and then that parking structure right next to it, hopefully somewhere in the area.
And then they'll rent a whole floor, and then it'll help pay for it.
Exactly.
So with the apartments, do we have any update on how that parking is going to work? Because there's quite a bit of concern that, well, first of all, I'm not sure how many people know that they actually have parking inside their building already. And then how many parking spots left over are they gonna get, and where are they gonna park?
Is that on?
Right.
No. I think you have to actually put it behind your ear to make it work. I was waiting for you to voice a man and start busting out a song or something like that.
I'm not doing that. I'm happy to address you from here. First of all, the agreement will be before you at the next council meeting. It is being finalized. This is the agreement with Tillian. And there's kind of a long history there. They came forward with a proposal for a shared project where the city would invest millions of dollars in a parking structure at that site. That was not really feasible. And so as the design evolved, there's this idea of off-street parking, which they have relied on. And there's a letter of intent that the city council signed, I want to say about a year and a half ago, sort of outlining the parameters of that parking agreement. There are a couple of components to it. The bottom line is it's 138 spaces. Those spaces are located primarily along the railroad tracks and at what we call the Albany lot, which is the newer parking lot that is north of the tracks on Albany, between 7th and 8th, or 7th and Kimball rather. And so that's where those project users would be parking. Those spaces are not entirely exclusive. There is going to be some overlapping uses with the city able to issue permits for basically persons employed in downtown. So not folks that would be going downtown to shop or to spend their money, but people that would be going downtown to work. And so we still have a discussion, and it could also be city employees. We'll have to have a discussion about what to do with those permits. But that's basically, the short answer is there's 138 spaces where they would be entitled to park, and that'll be a permit system.
Is that 138 spaces less the amount of spaces that they have inside their own area?
No, it was calculated on that because I think code requires 1.5 spaces per unit. And so, as I recall, I think the total they needed was 195, somewhere in there. And so they had about a third of those spaces on site. And so the 138 was what was left over to meet their code requirement.
Okay, and was that on the north side of the tracks or the south side of the tracks that we were just talking about making free parking?
All of the spaces, I think, if I understood the map correctly, would be free parking, otherwise free parking. Now, some of it will be restricted with these permits.
Okay. On both sides of the tracks?
There are two separate lots. So one is...
I don't know how many parking spots there are, I guess is what I'm getting at. So if
Sure.
they have 138 spaces that they need access to, does that leave any left over for free parking for the
Yes.
community?
Yes.
So we don't have an exact number.
I don't have a number for that.
But they won't take up the entire lot?
They will. It depends on which lot you're talking about, but they won't take up all the free parking that's been identified.
Okay, that was my question.
Very good. Any other questions for staff before we get some input from the public? Okay, so we do have about 20 minutes. So if you do wish to provide some comment, you're more than welcome, but we would ask you to limit it to a 2-minute maximum. That way we can get through as many people as possible. So if there is anybody that would like to come and voice their opinion, we'd welcome you to come up in an orderly fashion to the microphone and take a few minutes. And if you could state, if you don't mind, just stating your name for the record. No, when you come up. So yeah, come on up and just state your name. And then again, if you could just keep it to 1 or 2 minutes,
Hi,
that'd be great.
Marilyn Murray, and I just want to
Pull
know.
that on down. Do you mind? Just because we have to record these.
My name's Marilyn Murray, and I was here for the first meeting. But what I'd like to know is how much are the parking meters costing, and how much would a parking garage cost? You know, maybe to put that money that would go into the parking meters, just put that into the parking garage.
Great question.
That's the question.
And Steve can help me if I get off track here. So, with the parking meters will be incorporated, the proposal, again, this is still to be determined and approved by council, but the proposal would be that would be incorporated into the agreement where the car park would be providing those meters, and then basically they'd be getting paid back out of reduction of the revenue that's created. So rather than the city paying those up front, they would provide them and then offset. And I believe the cost is going to be, if I remember correct, I know there'll be less meters with the new proposal, so probably be around $150,000, I think. The most recent estimate we got for a parking garage was $30 million.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunately a very highly ticketed. If we had built it 10 years ago, it would have been a lot cheaper, but unfortunately concrete and steel and rebar is increased in price a lot. So
just for my opinion, I'm not in favor of the parking meters at all. And I think $1.50 is way too much. Yeah.
Do you own a business downtown, or do you mind just do you frequent down there a lot, or do you have a business down there? Or?
I'm down there a lot, yeah. But I walk, so but anyway, okay, so that's just my 2 cents.
Okay.
I'm not for them.
Very good. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Anybody else who would like to come forward and either make a comment or ask a question? Yes. And again, if you don't mind, if you state your name, and then if you don't mind letting us know you're a business owner downtown.
Sure. My name is Lane Blackmer. I own Creekside Hair Salon on the corner of Cleveland and Kimball. I'm also one of the co-founders of 2C Wine Down, which is on the plaza itself. You know, I have clients that come and they're in my salon chair for more than an hour, 2 hours, maximum about 3.5 hours. And I've been reaching out to them, asking them like, okay, what are your thoughts on this? You're going to be in my salon for 3 to 3.5 hours. They're proposing a $1.50 rate. They're thinking $4, $5 to park for almost 4 hours of time. Absolutely. And I understand that a lot of my clients, if you don't know, are on a fixed budget, but they like coming to my salon. They like coming to downtown Caldwell. They're willing to pay the $4.50, $5. I'm all about the meters. I think it's a healthy choice for the downtown Caldwell core. I see a lot of business owners park the car and they're there all day. Some businesses have vehicles, delivery vehicles that are sitting there 24 hours a day unless they're delivering vehicles. And I think if we just had a turnover or a mandated turnover where you move your vehicle after 3 hours and you pay for another 3 hours in a different spot, I think that just allows more traffic, more movement in downtown. And I think that it just allows better parking options as people come down for dinner, for the nightlight parade, for whatever options. I think we'll just see a healthier turnover in those options. And I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Anybody else that would like to ask any questions or make any comments? And if you don't mind just stating your name and the wonderful food establishments that you run downtown as well.
My name is Robert Mora, owner of Twisted Fig and the Extreme Pizza, also citizen here in Caldwell. Just wanted to clarify and maybe get some information from Steve, or maybe understanding on what's happening with 7th Avenue. In the chart, when they took that survey, I noticed it was green. And if you know 7th Avenue, it's pretty packed most of the time. I'm guessing that Tuesday, probably Tuesday on the marketplace, and then on that Mother's Day, it was probably closed down for the 7th Avenue. Understanding was that it was going to be some sort of parade, pedestrian type street. Can we get any more insight or update on that proposal?
Yeah, and I can give a little bit, and then Steve and maybe even Mark and Rob could do. So that was, I believe, an urban renewal project. I think we're talking about Festival. It was termed as Festival Street. On that was a planned urban renewal project to come in and basically would be pedestrian only from the alley to Arthur Street. So the alley just on your side, where Extreme Pizza is, would be pedestrian only from there down to Arthur. Bringing in, street trees and decorations, things like that, just making it basically a pedestrian only area. That project, I believe, was pulled from the urban renewal funding, so it is unfunded as of right now. And so I'm not sure when the implementation, the plan, I believe the plan is still to do that at some point in the future, but there's no funding mechanism for it right now. Is that more or less correct on that? So, and I'm not sure if that, hopefully that answers your question. If not, we can get you more info on that. So, anybody else? We do have a few more minutes if anybody wishes to say anything or any questions. Okay. Oh, yes.
Very quick
Go right
question.
ahead, Counselor.
Can businesses offer validation with this program? If they wanted to, is it possible that they could validate for people?
I'm sure it's possible. That's something, I don't know if that we've looked into that. And to be honest, I'm not sure how validations work. If like in Boise, I know that I think some can I've been in places where they do it. I don't know if it's just something the businesses get to do or if they pay for those validations that they hand out to people. I don't know how those usually run, but we could definitely find out that information and see, you know, what is the typical practice? Are they just giving out so many to each business, or do they pay for them and then allow those for their customers? But those are things we could look at. And Steve, do you know more info on that?
Absolutely, and that's a great question. Thank you for bringing that up. And Rapid City, what they do is they provide coins to businesses that choose to pay for them for their customers, and then they then pass those on to the customers to put into the meter. So it covers whatever time frame is outlined in that validation.
So people can pay on the app, or they can pay cash at the meter. And then the other thing I learned at the open house, which I didn't know, was that we're not looking at putting meters in front of every spot, right? Like if you kind of just can explain that just a little bit, just for people who think the meters are ugly or that they're going to line the streets, or what that's going to look like visually for people.
Yeah, that's another great point. Our goal is to reduce the amount of meters that go in front of and that come into our downtown, just because they do provide a little bit of that eyesore, but also that connotation. So we have what they call a multi-space meter that you could put into a parking lot, and that would be essentially the central area where patrons come in and pay for their parking services at that particular location. There will be a pay-by-app process as well. The car park uses an app called Park Mobile, and that will allow you to pay as well. So, and then they have meters that have the two heads on them. So there are other options that we're looking at. So what we've done is we've done a few walking tours with the car park and identified exactly where these different types of meters would be most appropriate. And I imagine in the future, as we work on reducing the scope of the boundaries, that we would continue to do that and just identify how we can eliminate, you know, the amount of meters that eventually go up.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. I appreciate all the input from council, the input from the public, you being here as we work through this process. I believe we're working towards a amenable solution for the downtown, and excited to see what those changes bring. So thank you again to everybody for being here and being a part of that. So that will end our workshop, and we will reconvene in 12 minutes to begin our regularly scheduled city council meeting.